Hello, thank you so much for being here today. I really feel very honored to have this powerhouse next to me. In the last few years, all of us, and I'm sure many of you, we have been working very hard about making some progress about issues related to public art. In our city, we have many issues affecting our muralists, our artists, and the people that are sitting here in this panel, they have been fundamental for making great changes in what's happening in the future of public art landscape in our city. During the last year, we had incredible, remarkable milestones. One of those was that among all of us, including hundreds of artists, we were able to write a mural ordinance that it is not perfect, but an ordinance that if it's approved within the next 90 days, we'll be able to have murals in LA again legally. That ordinance will lift the 2002 mural moratorium in our city. Second, we at the Mural Conservancy of Los Angeles have begun restoring historic murals that are reflective of the history of our city, and we are planning to keep on moving to do so with everybody's help. We cannot do this alone. We need your help. We need everybody's help. This is a labor of love of muralists, of art advocates, of the community at large, educators, writers. Everybody should get involved in these issues of bringing back our history of public art to the city. And then another huge milestone, because the work and the dedication of Chris Espinosa, sitting right here, the third to my left, we are able today to enjoy 1932 Siqueiros Tropical America del Pueblo. Chris was extremely important in working with the mayor and then as El Pueblo manager right now to bring this preservation, which is a collaboration between the city of Los Angeles and the Getty Conservation Institute. So I wanted to say, first of all, before each panelist will take 5 minutes to talk about their participation in public art and how they have written history in our city. After that, we'll open up a Q&A for all of you to give us your input. But I would like for you to please give a huge applause to these people. Without them, what's happening today in our city would not be possible. So I just wanted to say thank you. So I would like to start with Glenna. So each one of you, please give us an idea of your participation. For example, Glenna has given us MCLA pro bono supervision and advice about restoring her mural. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. This is a great day and a great opportunity for us to share some of our thoughts about public art and murals and how we all got involved as artists. I feel like I've been an artist since I was a little kid, and it wasn't until I was looking at different colleges that I was trying to search for the right way to do art, and I felt that when I got to graduate school and I entered in painting, I made friends with a woman, Angelica Acevedo, who was painting murals this was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she took me over to a school where she was painting a mural with elementary school kids, and it was like a light bulb went off, and I thought, yes, this is what I want to do. This is not an art that people can buy and own. This is an art that people can have for free and that they can enjoy and see in their schools, in their neighborhoods, in their communities, and so it was then that I was hooked, and that was in the mid-70s. When I got back to LA, I actually was hired by Judy Baca, who was running the Citywide Murals program, to coordinate murals all over LA. And 3 months after I got there, Judy left to form Spark, and I was 24 years old running the citywide murals program. So it was boot camp. I learned a lot. I made, a lot of friends with a lot of muralists, and grew to respect a lot of all the work that they were doing in LA. And we had actually had mural policies then, and systems on how to create murals and how to work with communities. And we were part of the city of LA. And so it was a real shock to me when I learned that the city had passed these ordinances that were then precluding artists from painting murals, and precluding homeowners and business owners and property owners from allowing paintings to be on their property. After I left the city, after 14 years, I went to CalArts, and I'm the head of the Community Arts Partnership Program, which is a youth arts organization that provides free arts programming to youth throughout the county of LA. And we work with thousands of youth each year. We have done murals, we've done printmaking, we've done painting, drawing, animation, filmmaking, music, theater, dance, media arts, all different kinds of things that are helping our youth create their own voice, and this has been a real joy for me. And it's been kind of my artwork for the last 22 years, because I feel that if I can be a catalyst for young people to do their own art and find their own voice, that gives me a lot of pleasure, and it is a creative activity for me. Then when I painted this mural, it was in 1984 for the LA Olympic Organizing Committee when the Olympics came to LA. And I wanted to do a tribute to kids, and so I called it LA Freeway Kids. And kids aren't really part of the Olympics, so I wanted to show the joy and spirit and energy of young people, just as Olympic athletes would have for their own sport. And so this was a mural that I created. These are all real children. They were I originally worked from photographs and then stencils, and then they're all about 20 feet high, and the whole mural is about 250 feet long, which I just read in the ordinance that it can't be more than 100 feet, so I don't know. Okay, it's height.
The height.
So,
you're okay.
So hopefully we're okay. And originally this mural, I had a background of a kind of a peach yellow color on it. But when we started restoring it and looking at how they looked against the gray, and figuring out that maybe it would be easier to restore and remove if there was any tagging, to leave it gray, I thought they kind of popped, and it kind of gave it a fresh kind of urban look, and so I was really happy with leaving the background gray, and so that's why it looks a little different from the early photos that you might see of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenna. Well, I must say that Glenna has been very brave coming to the site on the 101 to help us to look at it. We look at the mural when Willie Heron, who is our wonderful commission muralist that is restoring the murals in the 101, she would come and help us to look at everything and give us the information about the original pigments and all that. So we're very grateful for her pro bono advice and supervision for this wonderful asset to our city. So now, yes?
I just wanted to say that, when I was first commissioned in 1984, I didn't know that it was a huge honor, obviously, and but I didn't know it was a lifetime commitment to a wall on a freeway. And I'm a new grandmother, and I think, wow, now I'm a grandma out there on the freeway. So, yeah.
It's been wonderful, wonderful. So now we would like to hear from Tanner. I just wanted to say, when I met Tanner a few years ago, I was very impressed with his energy and his knowledge, and he's been absolutely incredible to help us and to guide us to write this mural ordinance draft. So please, Tanner.
She's too sweet. I am Tanner Blackman. I'm not an artist. I am an urban planner, but I've been blessed with the opportunity to be able to contribute to sort of art policy discussions in the city of Los Angeles for the last few years. And I've felt really honored to be able to sort of help affect change in some policy discussions. Most recently with, as Isabel and Han introduced, and thank you so much for putting this together and inviting us here today. I currently work for a city council member, Councilmember Jose Huizar, who represents the 14th District, representing pretty much all of downtown except for right here. And then Boyle Heights and El Sereno and Eagle Rock and a lot of Northeast LA. And the council member also grew up in Boyle Heights and sort of witnessed firsthand, as being much younger, the sort of birth of the mural movement in the East Side. And it's been really sort of foundational to his development. In one thing he always talks about is sort of seeing the histories of people he identified with, sort of peoples of color, peoples of oppressed peoples, written on the walls of the streets that he grew up in. And really getting that history in a way that he didn't get in his textbooks in school, and really being moved as now having the opportunity as a city council member to push forward to sensible solutions to sort of legalistic problems that have limited art in our streets for the past decade or so in LA. So I kind of got the job. I was kind of hired by the council member to help get the mural ordinance past the finish line here. I was kind of spearheading the writing of it for the city planning department, where I had been working for about 5 years before that, after grad school at USC. And I got to work in this really sort of legislative part of city planning department, where most of what city planners do is sort of implementing the rules, but there's a sort of special section that gets to kind of rethink the very rules and propose new policy in response to council motions and, you know, response from the public who are sort of outcrying for we want art in our streets, we want an answer to why we can't paint murals. And the short answer of how we even got into a mural ban in the city of Los Angeles is a complicated intersection of advertising and art and public space. So, for example, we've always been a city that supported the arts, in really proud of our title as mural capital of the world, and that flowering sort of happened due to the fact that there were no rules in place. You know, in absence of rules, anything goes, right? And so the same was true kind of for what was considered murals then, and there were no distinctions between sort of art and advertising in how muralism and mural permits were given in the city previously. And there was a big reaction in the 80s of how sort of a lot of sign companies were exploiting this sort of, you know, thin line between these two. And in order to try to sort of institutionalize and codify this anything goes approach, the city created this definition that we currently still have on the books of mural signs. And it was the first time we'd ever defined murals in code. And it was a good effort, but sort of it was challenged by the outdoor advertising industry, essentially on the grounds that we were restricting one type of constitutionally protected speech, advertising, when we were saying anything goes for another constitutionally type of protected speech, art. And in order to be sort of equally fair, the best answer at the time was to be sort of equally unfair to everyone. And it was sort of, then they'd created these other approach for sort of sign districts that were meant to be the way to allow outside the box signs, but it didn't work because sort of art was squozed out by commerce then in available areas of the city where these sign districts could happen, et cetera. So we needed a much more inclusive approach to how we deal with public art sort of in the private realm, on private property, on private ownership. And I was the guy who was sort of given that task a few years ago to help navigate this legal path. And I met Isabel through those efforts in putting together a sort of mural working group of Spark and Judy Baca, who Glenna mentioned, other members of the Mural Conservancy and Man One, and other folks up here. And a couple years later, we're literally inches away from having more sensible policy in place, and I'm really happy to have been able to contribute to those efforts. And I also, some of the efforts of some of the other people on this board, I mean, I just want to give thanks again to Isabel and the Mural Conservancy for putting this together. Glenn, it's so wonderful to see the Freeway kids back. That was another whole discussion I won't go into, of policy of why we couldn't have freeway murals for a long time. And then Chris Espinosa's leadership at the Pueblo, the council member, wanted me to personally thank you for your hard work in getting the Scaros Interpretive Center up and running. He was happy to support with motions and everything he could to help that along the way. And man, we're so bummed that Crew West closed down last month, sir, but happy to see you still around, and we're happy to help with any other efforts you have. And Judith, you're a legend. She's consulted me in so many ways, sort of in coming up with some of the approaches to the mural ordinance over the last couple of years. So thank you.
Great. Am I glad that we didn't need a mural ordinance in 1932 when Siqueiros painted this wonderful mural at El Pueblo. As I said earlier, we're very grateful that Chris Espinosa's dedication made it possible for the City of Los Angeles and the Getty Conservation Institute to have what we have today. So Chris, please tell us about how all this happened, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chris Espinosa. I'm the general manager of El Pueblo. And El Pueblo Historical Monument, you might ask, what is that? And that's our city's birthplace. It's the home of the world-famous Overa Street. It's, we have the Chinese American Museum. We are starting an Italian American Museum. It's the home of the city's oldest house, the Avila Adobe. And now we have the America Tropical Interpretive Center. And I want you to know that, sometimes when you come down to the plaza, you think, it's a tourist place, or, we go to church at La Placita. But the plaza is a very historic and significant place for Los Angeles. And it always had an incredible environment where there was free speech and protests and places for workers' rights, a place for immigration and immigrants to get together in the beautiful heart of Los Angeles. In 1932, David Alfaro Siqueiros was kicked out of Mexico, and he came to Los Angeles. He was invited to stay here, and in 6 months, he painted 3 murals. He was on the committee of the Olympic art competition, and he was extremely dynamic when he was here. In October, he unveiled America Tropical. Such an incredible mural. It's on the 2nd floor of the Hamill building. It's facing the south wall of the Italian Hall. Recently, just this October, we opened up this interpretive center. It's a 3-part project. It has a 2-gallery interpretive center on the bottom floor of the Sepulveda House. In there, it tells the life and the story of Siqueiros, why he came here and why they whitewashed his work, his different artist techniques, and just the power of all his work. In these computers and interactives, we have a whole body of his work. We were able to secure the rights to display it for the public. It's free of charge. On the 2nd floor, you can go up to a viewing platform where you can see the work for yourself. It was whitewashed in 1932 because of the powerful political content in there. They commissioned him, Overa Street had just opened at the time, and it was supposed to be, kind of this idealized view of a Mexican village. And so they said, well, why don't you come over and paint America Tropical? And they were thinking that they were going to have some, sleepy Mexicans with some fruit falling from the trees. Instead, he painted a Mayan mural in destruction, an indigenous on the cross with the capitalist eagle above his head, sharpshooters in the corner, jungles, jungle trees, and different faces within the mural. And it's an incredible sight. Even in its conserved state, it's much faded from when it was first painted. But even in that state, it's a very, very powerful political statement and a very powerful artistic statement. And it just, to me, reflects the beautiful authenticity of La Plaza and the Overa Street area and the different kind of people who've come in and out of there over the years. I invite you all to come. Last year we had some mural tours with the Getty Conservation Institute, where we would jump in buses and go around different parts of Boyle Heights and Highland Park to view a lot of great murals from Los Angeles. We've also had some lectures, and we will have some this summer. We're going to do a lot of music and summer series and have some late night hours of displaying the mural. It's a lot of fun. So I invite you all to come, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much, Grace. And, I think it's very important that we support this effort that the Getty, the GCI, and the City of Los Angeles had done to preserve this incredible mural. It's part of our history. It's what established muralism in Los Angeles. So I really would like to repeat what Chris said, that we need to go there, we need to support the efforts, and we need to bring attention to what we have. And now I would like for Judith Hernandez. Judith, besides being a friend, I have a lot of admiration for her for many years. I study her artworks. She is part of our past history, and she's part of our history today. She continues to do things that relate her art nationally, internationally. So, Judith?
Thank you. Thank you. I really wanted to come today to implore the people who are here, and I was hoping that there would be many more, but I think those of you who are here, the fact that you're sitting in those seats says that you have an interest in public art. I've had a wonderful 40-year career, and for 10 of those years, it was my privilege. I'm essentially a fine artist, an easel painter, but for 10 years, I did do murals. I did them under the aegis of my membership in Los Four with the great Carlos Almaraz and Frank Romero, and it was probably the most amazing experience of my life as an artist, and I feel so privileged to have done that. And I think that one of the things that was terribly disappointing to me to find out was that I left Los Angeles in 1984. I grew up here. My career began here in 1984. I got married and I moved to Chicago. And the last thing I did was a 3-story mural. Some of you may remember it. It came down, I think, in 2001. It was on the Spring Street side. It was on Spring Street near the freeway next to the Placita Church. It was the Big Virgen. And it was there for 20 years, which amazed me. I only have one piece of public art that still remains in California, in Los Angeles. But while I was gone, I sort of lost track, didn't really know what was going on. And after meeting Isabel, she began to tell me about how public art had been, harmed by this ordinance. It was probably an unintentional consequence, but nonetheless, there were amazingly talented young artists who did not have the freedom that we did to make public art and to, I think for me, continue a long tradition of art as social commentary. Obviously, there are things in society that people need to be reminded about injustice, about inequalities, or even just the celebration, open celebration of one's culture. Public art's the only thing that can really do that. And I think that these young public artists were harmed by the years that they were unable to paint freely. And of course, Isabel, who is endlessly charming and relentless, got me involved the moment I stepped off the plane practically, and I began to go to these meetings and contribute what I could. And I think the ordinance that has been crafted and that will go forward will absolutely unleash an amazing tidal wave of public art all around the city. And I think the more public acknowledgement on its behalf from citizens, like those of you sitting here, to the people at City Hall, will, I think, reinforce, to them that what they have done is a good thing. And I think it's very important that they hear your voice. And so I will turn over the mic to a young public artist who I admire very much, who's sitting right here.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Judith. More than charming, I'm very old, so I know these people forever. You know, Man Juan, I have known him for many, many, many years, and he has been an inspiration not only to our younger generation of graffiti artists and artists in general, but to people like me, because I saw him from the beginning, and I saw him evolving to become a gallerist, to be an artist, to do so many things. What also impressed me about him is his work with youth. He's been a mentor to many. So please tell us about what you have done, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel, and glad to be here with all these great people on this panel. So I had a little different journey onto my public art career, or just artist career in general. I started off being a graffiti artist when I was in high school, and nothing was really working for me in terms of being able to express myself. I was a good student. I was, playing sports and doing all this other stuff, but there was still an urge for me to express myself artistically. I'd been drawing since I was a kid, but I never really knew what I could do with my art. And I got involved in graffiti. And first just started by tagging buses, the RTD, and on the way to school and all that. But quickly it turned into, I wanted to create my name and my graffiti pieces and make them huge and make them, wall size. I grew up in Alhambra, which is basically like the gateway to the San Gabriel Valley. And so we'd always be, my parents would take me out to, Boyle Heights and East LA and all that. And I would see murals by streetscapers, by, like all these incredible murals that were all over especially Boyle Heights and East LA area that I used to go to a lot. And I said, why can't I do something on that scale? Why not? And the only thing was that I loved spray painting. And so I decided I was going to do murals that were that large and spray paint them. What was the harm in that? Well, I was a little bit naive, I guess, at the time, but I went out and started learning how to create murals. I started working with different artists. At first, a lot of the Chicano artists that I would meet wouldn't really want to work with us because they were like, well, you guys are vandalizing our murals, or you guys are part of the problem. But I remember working with Ernesto de la Loza, was one of the first artists that kind of gave me a hand and let me work on one of his murals. I remember just starting to explore what I could do as an artist. Now, at the time, it wasn't just about public art. At the time, it was also, vandalism and the whole debate whether graffiti was art or vandalism. And so another one of my mentors, Chaz Bojorquez, who I worked with quite a bit over the years, we used to have conversations about this all the time, and we would be on panels like this with a chief of police sitting next to us and with a gallery owner sitting next to me on the other side. And I got caught in the middle, like, it was really weird because it was like, all I'm trying to do is do art. And yet I'm being prevented by the law, even though I'm trying to do it right. I'm trying to do it with permission and everything like this. And so I knew early on that I was going to be, that the spotlight would be on me because I wanted to do it publicly, I didn't want to just go in the middle of the night, even though I didn't want to continue doing that as I got older and just, doing the sides of freeways and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to, get paid. I saw all these people doing these beautiful murals all over town, all over the world, and I thought that's what I wanted to do, so why not do it? So as my career, then I went to to Loyola Marymount University, got my degree in fine art, which I thought I needed to have just so that I can prove to people that I'm more than just a thug and a vandal. So when people actually ask me for credentials, I can, tell them, well, I have a fine art background. So that actually did help. There's a lot of doors that opened for me because I went to university. And as I moved forward and started doing a lot of public art. A lot of my public art started with the fact that I was doing corporate murals or corporate work. I did a lot of murals for Coca-Cola for a number of years. Other companies would hire me to do mural campaigns or do murals in their offices or whatever. So I started making money as an artist, and I was producing art and showing in galleries. At the same time, I was doing my graffiti on the streets, and I was also working for people like MTV and Adidas and Reebok and whatever, doing murals and doing art things everywhere. So as I kept moving forward, I started seeing that graffiti was still being pushed aside. People were not accepting graffiti art because of the huge negativity regarding vandalism, especially in a city like LA, where immediately people think of violent gangs or something like that. So I would be painting a mural that I got commissioned to do, but because I was doing with a spray can, I would have police surround me and pull guns on me, things like that, just because I had a spray can. If I had a paintbrush, it wouldn't have been the same scenario. So these kind of things started bugging me, and I just decided to be even more outspoken. And I figured if I have credentials, if I'm doing it in a legal sort of manner, and I'm getting paid, and I'm getting big companies behind me, then it's going to be very difficult for someone to, like the LAPD, to raid my house. Even though I know they probably wanted to a lot, but I just kept doing that and kept pushing forward and trying to make a living as an artist. In 2002, I decided to open Crew S Gallery because of many years of trying to show my work in galleries and being told that graffiti was not a viable art form. I decided to open my own gallery and just represent graffiti artists from all over the world. And after 10 years of doing that, I finally closed the doors last month in December. I figured a decade of doing that was great. I proved my point. I had fun and met a lot of cool people, but this ordinance is going to drop, and I need to paint murals. And if I'm running a gallery, I can't paint murals, So that's part of the thinking there. But anyways, so I've been on this journey that I'm still on, and trying to just continually educate people about the power of graffiti art and the power of just murals and art in general. People like to use a lot of different labels all the time and pigeonhole you into this or that, but at the end of the day, if you see what's going on right now in the world on a global context, LA is very much behind the times. We're not a progressive city. You may think we have the entertainment industry here and this and that, but when you go to Europe and you see 50 to 100,000 people at an event that is all centered around music and street art, and they're bringing kids and youth together, and then you look at a city like LA, which is just continually, trying to, keep youth, I don't want to say, they keep trying to criminalize youth, and everything that the youth want to do turns into a negative point of view. And so I think finally, with what's going on with the mural ordinance and all that, I think what it takes for a shift is people who are passionate and people who can think differently. And I think that's what all these panelists up here are. And I'm very proud to be up here. And so, I welcome any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. I also wanted to let you know that today we're all talking, we had all been talking about the issues affecting public art in Los Angeles for many years. It hasn't been easy. We had fought, we had argued, we had discussed so many things. So I'm sure many of you, I see some artists in the audience. I see Jose Lozano, great artist here, and I see J. Michael Walker, who is part of the show here. If you haven't seen his artwork, he has a triptych, and he has done murals in LA. We all I found out by coming from a different country. I was politically forced out of my country in 1973. I learned that we shouldn't be fighting with each other, that we need to talk to each other. We have enough of that violence and aggressivity out. We need to talk to each other, and by doing that, we come to a consensus. We come to do things that we should be proud of. I am very proud to have been part with all these people and hundreds of muralists, old and young, in the city, to do what we have done. So I know that you probably have questions, you probably have ideas. We need your input, so this is an opportunity for you to please ask the panelists, and I see Walker over there who has a question. So we're going to take a mic over there to Jay Michael, please. So please feel free to ask any questions, because not everybody knows what's going on, so we would really appreciate your input.
I think one of the most exciting aspects of murals and muralismo so above all in the Chicano community, but around LA, is to take the concept of the wall and turn it inside out. Because a wall is all about creating a barrier between what's inside and what's outside. And what muralism is all about is erasing that wall and essentially inviting people who historically are on the outside, inviting them in. So I'd like to invite all of the panelists who are interested in addressing that concept of how they've used muralism as a way of taking people who are historically removed from the public conversation and giving them power. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions here?
I'll respond.
Yes, please, over here.
Hi, and thank you for addressing these important social issues through your work. My concern today is I know that the workers' rights, feminism, all of these things have been addressed by muralists. My concern with the global warming situation is that life on this planet as we know it may not exist if we don't do something. If you were an artist or an artist that wanted to work with those issues and approach city council, how would you, start out to address those issues in a public art kind of way? I mean, not in terms of artistically, but in terms of who would you approach, what would you do to, who would you need to get permission from, or what types of grants would you, recommend? Or
I think the best person to answer that is probably Tanner.
Well, instead of just because these are wildly different questions, let's respond to the first gentleman. I love this concept of wall inside out, and I'd like to spin my response slightly different. I mean, sort of irrespective of whichever community and sort of the message being presented in kind of an abstract, what I'm really interested from a sort of urban design and urban planning perspective is the power of placemaking and the way that you take a gray wall and by infusion of color and narrative and everything else, you immediately transform space with the investment of sweat equity and a good idea, right? And it's powerful, and I mean, in the lifetime on sort of commitment that these walls still have resonating with people are what I find really amazing about it in terms of bringing culture to the people. Therefore, where we're at an LA art show right now that the sort of a critique of museums and everything in the past is sort of being cloistered institutions, but making this sort of art then available right there where you live in the street. And another thing that I just would be remiss if I didn't touch on when I have a captive audience and I'm talking about art policy is sort of economic development arguments for art in communities as well too. Chris mentioned a few moments ago the mural tours that were sort of organized around Pacific Standard Time, which is a great opportunity to think about how to sort of bring people into communities that they may have never visited and deposit their dollars as well in local shops and whatnot. But also, I think that there's some sort of underspoken themes that art advocates sort of should really press policymakers on in terms of sort of art as a value add itself. For example, there's all kinds of ridiculous stories about sort of Banksy pieces. A condo was advertised in the UK as Banksy with condo attached. And a couple years ago, an art collector had flown from New York to buy a piece of property that a Banksy had stenciled on. And so therefore the piece of art was worth more than the land and improvements upon which it was painted. Finally, my last sort of economic development argument is more on the kind of Richard Florida creative class, creative economy, kind of how do we create the conditions to attract people who will bring new industries and new ideas and different things to place. And we have a sort of amazing example of that happening in real time right now in the Arts District right over here, how sort of people who were really sort of invested in this community are now starting businesses there, and it has this really powerful force. Check out Estria Foundation and their water murals. And there's lots of different ways. I mean, in terms of the sort of latent mural explosion we're about to have, I know for a fact that there are tons of property owners downtown who are just waiting for the mayor to sign this mural ordinance in order to let murals be painted on their wall. They don't want to be sort of against the ban right now. And so hopefully there are these opportunities for today's young muralists and whatnot. So thank you.
Can I just say to Michael, I'm glad you brought that up. And I think historically, you know, because, you've been around for a while, and Glenna, social political art began with the Chicano civil rights movement in Los Angeles. And I think if it had not been for that outlet, for the ability to communicate within a community ideas that eventually morphed into other things that were less political, that continued to be a personal cultural mark on the part of the city that was yours. Without trying to be divisive or anything, I think those of us who grew up in LA know that there is a river that separates the east side from the west side. And I've almost thought, that was done with very consciously to make sure that, that certain people stayed on their side of the river. I think that one of the things that I hope that an opening or a freedom to do public art again will bring new voices with different points of view that are more international, that are more inclusive, that will bring people together the way those murals did in the 1970s. And I think that, there is a place for every message. And it's a matter of artists, once they're free to paint murals, and it's a matter of finding a building owner, someone who owns a home who has a garage door, who shares your point of view and wants to share that. And then it's really up to artists to find their way, the way we did, about what the community would like to see. It's certainly a matter of finding a balance between respect for the idea and respect for the people who need to live with it. And all of those things have to be rewritten now that the new ordinance will happen. And those of you who are young artists, you need to start thinking about these things now, because you're going to be asked these questions and you're going to have an answer. So,
I just wanted to say a few things about J. Michael Walker's idea. I really love the idea of turning a wall inside out. I mean, when I was coming here, I was thinking of how walls sing. If I'm walking down 3rd and Traction, I feel like I'm floating in air, walking by these beautiful pieces. When I was a kid growing up, driving down the 101 freeway and seeing all these different murals bounce off the walls, it was just like transformative for me. As I drive down Chavez or, First Street, you just see these things and they speak of history. One of the things that I've been trying to experiment with is at the Sepulveda House, we were meeting with George Yepes yesterday, and we were thinking about ideas of how to talk about historic figures at the birthplace of Los Angeles, around those old neighborhoods, and painting these people on the walls, because there's a whole bunch of hidden stories throughout all that neighborhood. You know, under Union Station, there's thousands and thousands of stories in Palo Verde and where Dodger Stadium is, and that whole, where you see parking lots, there were neighborhoods and people engaging. And so we were talking about trying to, you know, paint the walls with all these people, much like, you know, you bring back all these different people from the past and put them in the present. And I think that's a lot of fun. And so I think of it as walls singing.
Yes, good one. Yeah, totally. Thank you so much, Chris. And definitely, you know, what you're saying is so important, because as the muralists had the opportunity to paint in the 70s and the 80s, I think that today's artists really need to give that opportunity to create legally, because our city needs to show those new faces, the new creativity that will make us, what you were saying earlier, Los Angeles, not only, again, the capital, the mural capital of the world, but also to bring this vibrancy that the young people can provide to the city. So it'd be wonderful to see that. I saw somebody who had a hand up here.
Hi, my name is Lori Rush, and I'm an art history teacher. And Judy Baca has a theory that the reason that young people tag existing murals is because they don't know the history. Somewhere in the last 20 years, the story has gotten dropped. And I wonder how you all feel about that, and have some ideas about how we're going to need to catch up the young people of Los Angeles so that they know the story, so that they can add their story in an appropriate manner.
I think she's right, and I think it's, you know, it goes to the, you know, to the you know, sad state of affairs in public education, where the arts are the first things that get cut. They keep sports, but somehow, you know, art and music go away. I also think, I mean, not to blame, you know, to blame someone else for the problems. I think communities don't pass on that information. Parents don't do a good job. Local community organizations don't do a good job in showing their respect and their reverence for things, you know, within their neighborhood, and then pass that idea along to the younger generation. The one place where I would disagree with Judy is that one of the things I saw in the 1970s was work that was not tagged. Well, let me go back a little bit. It's interesting, it was interesting for me to see that after a while, after a few years of seeing public art in East LA, people became very astute patrons of that particular discipline. And they could tell what was good and what was not so good. The things that were good didn't get tagged. The things they thought were not quality. So, just saying.
Would you like to, Manuel, would you like to address that one, please?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the first reasons why murals were getting tagged, specifically freeway murals, had nothing to do with history or anything else. All it had to do with was the fact that these taggers and young kids realized that if they tagged a mural, then the city couldn't just come and paint it over in gray. And so, but if they painted it,
would be up longer.
It would be up longer, so their name would stay longer. That's kind of how it all started.
I think the conversation was internal to the community, the tagger community, kind of in that way. Then
you know, and that's kind of why people started tagging over murals. But now it's gone to a point where, it's been out of control, and you know, there's murals that, especially Judy's, who has you know, touched up her murals countless times, and it gets tagged again. You know, one of the things I think is that sometimes, you know, things aren't relevant to young people that might have been relevant to younger generation. You know, I wouldn't have been introduced to jazz or things like that if I wasn't into hip hop. So if I didn't find out about hip hop, I never would have known about some of these great jazz musicians. And I think it's kind of similar now. It's like you have to have some of these young people working side by side with some of these artists who have been doing it for a long time, and to reintroduce the history. You know what I'm saying? And so to get young people to you know, they may not know who, they probably don't even know who Cicados is, you know? But if Banksy decided to do something on the side of a Cicados mural, all of a sudden there'd be this dialogue. Don't say it. I'm just saying. But, you know, but it's like, it's just what's relevant. And, you know, in this time and an age where everything is so quick, so digital, so fast, it's, you know, you have to capture these kids' attention, and you have to speak their language. And so I think that's, you know, what needs to happen, I think, with murals in LA is that we just need to start speaking the language of the youth and engaging them. You know, I think that's one of the powerful things that Judy did do, and some of the early muralists did, was they engaged the community and they worked with the youth, you know, hands-on. And these kids, instead of being able to work hands-on with muralists, they're being thrown in jail for tagging on the side of a pole or on a tree or something, you know? And there should be a whole new conversation about how to engage these communities and these kids to create, you know, artwork.
Would you like to talk about that too, and your experience with the students?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this for a long time, ever since the Belmont tunnels were put off limits, but it was even though it might not have been legal, it was a place where a lot of graffiti artists and aerosol painters could go and show off their work. And I think if our city was more, you know, kind of respectful of youth and maybe thinking about how we create place for youth and for young people and what they're doing, just like there's been skate parks developed and things like that. Exactly. I think you'd have less crime and less negative behavior and less vandalism if you were giving young people a place where they can feel that they can be themselves and they can do what they're interested in.
Absolutely.
And to the teacher there, I mean, I remember being in school and, you know, all I wanted to learn about was contemporary art, and we had nothing. I mean, it was like Impressionism was about as far as it went, and it was like really frustrating. So I think there's ways of, I don't know, maybe developing courses or you know, working with the school district. I know that's a big, huge thing. We do that. I do that in my work. But getting those more contemporary kind of art forms and histories discussed and talked about and learned and shared so that young people are aware of them.
Well, we have time for 2 more questions. So here.
To the artists specifically, what advice would you give for the next generation muralists? And the 2 questions are basically advice on how to get work once the ordinance is lifted, and how important it is to, you know, say what you want to say in the painting as opposed to just doing something commercial that's pretty.
Your question is directed to the 3 artists on the panel, right?
I would say that get a good art education. You know, be the artist who delivers a quality project to your audience. Give them that much respect. And then I think, you know, you have to understand, you know, what your audience is interested in seeing. I mean, it's very presumptuous, I think, artists who simply do something because they think it's wonderful, but don't have to live with it. You know, don't have to walk outside their door and see it every day. You have to. It's a very special relationship. It's not like having a painting in a gallery or museum. You know, it's right across from your home. Or, and I think artists who've never done public art need to be sensitive to that. You need to do some research. You need to walk the neighborhood. You need to talk to people. And then if your interests and their interests work together, then, you know, you propose ideas. You have meetings. There's homework. You know, when you do public art, there's homework to do if you do it right. And if you're interested in really creating an asset for that community, it's incumbent on you to do it right.
Lena, would you like to address that?
I mean, I agree with Judith. I think that getting a good education is part of it. I think the most important part is working with that community and really talking to people and showing them what you're about, and then getting their ideas, and sometimes even incorporating their ideas into what you want to do, because she's right. I mean, if it becomes part of that community, then it should have that community's buy-in and interest. And they should really have a part in it.
Alex?
Yeah, one of the things is that what they've both touched on, I think, is the importance of relationship. And, when you do a piece of art publicly, you create a relationship within the community, but then you, as an artist, also have to create that relationship among the community. You're a leader at that point, and you're bringing a vision to a community that you may live in or not live in, but you have you're all of a sudden you become this leader, and people will listen to you, and so you want to put something up that speaks to that. One of the issues I've had with especially with the street art movement is you've had a lot of these artists come from all over the world and come throw pieces in LA, and they're here for 5 days, they paint it on the wall, and then they leave. Well, what ends up happening is some of them are beautiful, some of them are not so beautiful. And what happens when it gets tagged? Who's going to take care of it? What happens if there's an issue in the community about that piece? There's no one to have a dialogue with, And I've even spoken to some of these artists, and they're back overseas, and I say, hey, this is going on with your mural. And they say, well, I really don't care. I already did it. Now I'm painting in Spain, so whatever. And I think that's kind of sad because, I think there is you do owe it, like Judah said, to the people and to the community to create something for them and give them something that they can hang on to, because I think we're bringing art. I always tell people that when I paint murals, I feel like I'm bringing the museum to the people, because a lot of the times these communities, they don't know where the Getty's at. You don't know how to get over there, but you can bring a 50-foot mural that they're going to see every day. I've done murals where the mural was falling apart, so I came back to redo it, and people come out the door and start yelling at me and tell me, no, you can't remove it. This is my mural. And I'm like, no, it's my mural. I painted it. And they're like, no, this is my mural. I live here. And I was like, you're right. It is your mural. And so you have to be sensitive to all that kind of stuff, and you have to be able to address it and work with people. But at the end of the day, I think it's such a beautiful gift that we have to be able to be artists and do public art that at the end of the day, it's all worth it. So just the only advice I give you is just hustle and talk to the community, talk to the owners, come up with ideas that are big ideas, because the people in the community, they need it.
Thank you, Alex. And I think I totally agree with you that our murals, public art, is the bridge. That's the bridge that connect our communities, our youth, our kids, with the museums and the galleries. That's the first step. That's the first thing that our kids see when we're driving on the freeway. Those murals, and I know that will trigger their imagination, and they will want to go to a museum later. So there was somebody else here.
So Los Angeles is a diverse city that's filled with many layers of history and culture. And that being said, what sort of issues of cultural sensitivity have been brought up during the implementation of murals in Los Angeles and the experiences that all of you have had, and how have those issues been dealt with? And some of this was just touched upon, but I'd like to just hear more like pinpointed answers or experiences, please.
Yeah.
Who are you directing that question to? Anybody in particular? I can.
To anyone.
To anyone in the panel.
I'll offer sort of a big discussion in how to draft citywide policy for 4 million people, for the second largest city in the nation. There's this tendency in Los Angeles to sort of want to create a really sort of district approach and let communities sort of decide. And it was interesting a little over a year ago when faced with this opportunity of whether to pursue an ordinance that would sort of be a district approach or would be a citywide approach. I thought it was an interesting, good moment of sort of political fortitude that the powers that be said, no, this is an important enough issue that we need to address this at the citywide level and allow people, there's property rights issues that, to allow murals throughout the city. It has come up sort of as a discussion then after making that decision where, you know, recently, I guess some communities sort of in the Valley or in different places are sort of more conservative politically communities were sort of worried about that potential for art in their communities that they might not like. And and it's tied to sort of some of the things I think Man One touched on with sort of perception and how people sort of view certain types of art as vandalism or not or whatnot, whether they are you know allowed art pieces or not. And that's sort of wherein I think it's really important to make these sort of placemaking and economic development arguments to show that sort of how this is murals and art have sort of other value too when someone subjectively might not like this piece. You know, I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming to this panel. We are very grateful to our panelists and to you for coming to this. So thank you so much for your support.